Hey everyone, how are you? Thanks so much for joining me this evening for Candlelight Vinyasa Yoga. My name is Julia and I'll be guiding you through your practice today. Before we get started, I'm going to read you all this little waiver. In order to make these classes as really accessible to our participants, we will be using a verbal warning and assumption of risk at the beginning of the class. Participation in this online class is voluntary. Physical activity programs may result in injury, and by participating, you assume the risk of injury that may result from your participation. We strongly recommend that you participate from a space that is suitable for this activity. For example, make sure that you have moved nearby furniture and other potential hazards. If you are participating in a yoga class or a class that involves laying on the ground, we recommend using a mat, or if you don't have one, a carpeted area. Participants are encouraged to stop if they experience pain or injury and should seek appropriate medical advice or care as needed. William & Mary Health and Wellness strongly recommends that each participant have an annual physical examination and follow the advice of your healthcare provider before participating. And before we sit down on our mats, if you have like a big textbook, a thick textbook or a book or a yoga block or something like that, go ahead and grab one. If you don't, that's totally fine. We're just going to use it to help in our peak pose, which will be crow. And if you have or have not gone to grab one, just go ahead and meet me on the mat when you're ready. Legs crossed, sitting up straight, reaching the crown of the head up towards the ceiling, rolling your shoulder blades down the back, stacking your shoulders over your hips, and laying your palms above your knees. Allow the gaze to soften or the eyes to close. And let's start by emptying all the air out of our lungs and breathing in slowly and deeply through the nose. Filling the lungs up as much as possible, and open the mouth for a cleansing exhale. Again, deep, slow inhale through the nose. Cleansing exhale. Once again, deep inhale through the nose. Filling up the lungs as much as possible. And take an exhale. Coming back to the breath, breathing in and out through the nose. Emptying out all the air from your lungs, starting on empty. And this time, just breathing in 1/3 of the way full and hold. Breathe in 2/3 and hold. Breathe in all the way and hold at the top. Exhale 1/3, hold. Exhale 2/3, hold. Exhale all the way and hold on empty. Inhale 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. Exhale 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. Inhale 1, 2, 3. Exhale 3, 2, 1. Inhale 1, 2, 3. Exhale 3, 2, 1. Feel free to continue this 3-part breath at your own cycle, or coming back to your natural breath. Feel free to join me in moving into an Ujjayi Breath, slightly constricting the back of the throat as you still breathe in and out through the nose, creating a bit of an ocean sound. Blinking the eyes open, switching the crossing of the legs. Sitting up nice and tall and bringing your right ear towards your right shoulder. Come back through center, bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. Through center, right ear to right shoulder. Through center and left ear to left shoulder. Back to center, reach your arms overhead, side stretching over to the right, keeping space between the shoulders and the ears and keeping the weight evenly distributed between the sits bones. Coming through center, stretching over to the right, to the left. To the right once more, maybe coming a little bit deeper this time. Through center and over to the left. Back to center, arms down. Bring the soles of the feet together in Bada Konasana, bound angle pose. Your heels can be closer or farther away from your sits bones, whatever's most comfortable for you. And allow your knees to splay to the sides, gripping your ankles or your feet and reaching through the crown of the head. Coming back to the breath. Use your hands to guide your legs closed, making your way into tabletop. Stacking your shoulders over your wrists and stacking your hips over your knees. Your feet are directly behind your knees. Beginning to dip the back, bring the gaze forward for cow. Leading with the belly button, rounding the back and tugging the chin to cat. Dipping the back, gaze forward, cow. Rounding the spine, cat. Move through cat and cow a few more times at your own pace. Incorporating a little side to side. And meet in neutral. Reach out in front of you with your left hand as if you were to shake someone's hand and step back through your right heel, creating one line and engaging the core to help keep your balance. Rounding the back, bringing your elbow to your knee and hold. Extend. Elbow to knee. Extend. Elbow to knee. Extend. Lower your hand, lower your knee, flip your right palm over, touching each fingertip to your thumb, and reverse. Balling up your fist and straightening the elbow a little bit. Shake it out. Reaching your left arm in front of you, pressing back through your left heel. Elbow to knee. Extend. Elbow to knee. Extend. Elbow to knee. Extend. Lower your hand, lower your knee, flip your left palm over, touching each fingertip to your thumb, and reverse. Ball up your fist, straighten the arm a little bit, and shake it out. Pressing both hands into the mat, tuck your toes, and send the hips up and back to downward facing dog. Pedaling out the feet. Bringing your chest towards your thighs. Coming up on the toes, bend the knees, and straighten the legs as you bring your heels closer to the mat. And finding stillness. Bring the gaze to the top of the mat and slowly walk forward to forward fold. Bending the knees generously, releasing the head and shoulders. And grounding through the feet as you slowly come all the way up with a flat back, reaching your arms overhead to upward salute. Drawing your hands through heart center to Tadasana, mountain pose. toes. Really grounding through the three corners of the feet, which are below the big toe mound, the little toe mound, and the heel. Drawing up through the kneecaps, externally rotating the shoulders and sending energy through the fingertips. Reaching through the crown of the head, chin parallel to the mat. Upward salute, arms overhead. Soft bend in the knees, folding forward from the hip creases with a flat back. Uttanasana. Tracing the fingertips up the shins with a flat back, halfway lift. Ardha Uttanasana. Back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat and step back to plank. Lower your knees to the mat, untuck your toes, and keep your elbows hugging in by your sides as you lower all the way down, resting your forehead on the mat. Pressing the tops of the feet into the mat, legs engaged, kneecaps lifting, hovering your fingertips above the mat. As you inhale, peel the chest off the mat for baby cobra, keeping the gaze lower, Ujjayi. Exhale, lower back down, press your hands into the mat, tuck the toes, coming up through tabletop to downward dog. Bring the gaze to the top of the mat and walk your way forward to forward fold. Grounding through the feet as you come all the way up with a flat back. Draw your hands through heart center, Tadasana. Upward salute, soft bend in the knees, folding forward, halfway lift, reaching through the crown of the head, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat and step back to plank. Stacking your shoulders over your wrists, reaching through the crown of the head and pressing back through your heels, core engaged. Lower the knees, untuck the toes, lower all the way down. Keeping minimal weight in the hands as you peel the chest off the mat for cobra. And lower back down. Tuck the toes and send the hips back to downward dog. Lift the left leg to three-legged dog. Dial the pinky toe to point towards the mat so that your hips are level towards the mat. Bend the knee, draw the knee in towards the chest and plant the left foot. Lowering the back knee and tucking the back toes so we're in low lunge with your front knee stacked over your ankle, your left hip drawing back and your right hip drawing forward to face the top of the mat. Beginning to straighten the front leg, coming into runner's lunge. Flexing and pointing the toes, pointing them over to the left and to the right as we open up the hamstring. And flowing from low lunge to runner's lunge. A few times. Meeting in low lunge, you can stay here or you can bring one hand and then the other up onto the thigh, reaching your arms overhead. Plant your hands on the mat, tuck the back toes, lift the knee, send the left leg back to three-legged dog, lowering your toes down to the mat. Bring the gaze to the top of the mat, walking forward to fold. Upward salute. Draw your hands through heart center to Tadasana. Coming all the way back up and folding forward. Halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat, step back to plank. And you can either lower all the way down to cobra or join me in coming forward on the toes, lowering halfway to chaturanga, and coming forward to upward facing dog with your hips and your knees lifted up off the mat, gaze forward. And we'll all meet in downward dog. Lifting the right leg to three-legged dog. Bend the knee, draw it in towards the chest, planting the right foot. Lower the back knee and tuck the back toes. Front knee stacked over ankle, right hip drawing back, left hip drawing forward. Beginning to straighten the leg, pointing and flexing through the foot, pointing the toes over to the left and to the right, and flowing between low lunge and runner's lunge. Meeting in low lunge, you can stay here or reach your arms up overhead. Planting your hands on the mat, untuck the toes, lift the knee. Meeting back in downward dog, and step or float to the top of the mat. Reaching your arms up towards the ceiling and drawing your hands to heart center. Feel free to grab water anytime you need. With your hands at heart center, let's sit back to Uttanasana, a chair pose. You should still be able to see the tips of your toes, keeping the chest nice and lifted. Option to reach your arms up overhead. Great job. Let's forward fold, halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat, step back to plank. Taking a flow of your choice, something we've done before. It can be cat and cow, whatever you like, and we'll meet in downward dog. And coming up on the toes, let's come forward to plank, adjusting your feet as you need to. And we'll just hold here for a few more seconds. Lifting the hips back to downward dog. And coming up on the toes, rolling forward to plank. Hold. You got this. Lifting the hips back to downward dog. And one more time, let's come up on the toes and roll forward to plank. Really engaging the core for a couple more seconds. And come back to downward dog. Lift the left leg to three-legged dog, bend the knee, plant the left foot, and come up to crescent lunge. Hips facing forward, front knee stacked over ankle. Really drawing the knees in towards the midline, finding that adduction. Up on the ball of the back foot, arms overhead. Planting your hands on the mat, step back to downward dog. Lifting the right leg. Bend the knee, draw it in towards the chest, plant the right foot, coming up to crescent lunge. Again, hips facing forward, knees drawing in towards the midline, arms overhead. Plant your hands on the mat, step back to downward dog, lowering your knees to the mat, untuck your toes, send the hips back to child's pose, resting your forehead on the mat and laying your arms down by your side. Reaching your arms out in front of you, lift the hips, tuck the toes, meet in downward dog. Bring the gaze to the top of the mat and step or float to the top of the mat. Reaching your arms up towards the ceiling, hands at heart center, and sitting back into chair. Maybe coming up on the toes this time. Lower your heels back down and fold forward. Halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat and step back to plank, taking a flow of your choice and meeting in downward dog. Lifting your left leg to three-legged dog, bend the knee, and plant the left foot. Planting the right foot as well so that your feet are about hip width apart. And reaching your arms up overhead to warrior one. With your front knee stacked over your ankle, your hips angled towards the front of the mat, and your arms reaching up overhead. Planting your hands on the mat, stepping back to downward dog. Lifting the right leg, planting the right foot, planting the back foot as well, hip width apart, coming up to warrior one. Planting your hands on the mat, step back to downward dog. And step or float to the top of the mat. Reach your arms up overhead. Hands at heart center. Once again, sitting back into chair pose. Taking whichever arm position you prefer. And folding forward. Halfway lift. Back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat and step back to plank. Take a flow of your choice and meet in downward dog. Lift your left leg to three-legged dog. And bring your nose to your knee, your knee to your nose, rounding the back, and holding here in cheetah. Just a few more seconds. Coming back to three-legged dog. Once again, bringing your knee to your nose and hovering for a moment. Back to three-legged dog. And one more time, hovering in cheetah. Then go ahead and plant the left foot, planting the right foot as well, hip width apart, coming up to warrior one. Interlacing your hands behind your back with the left thumb on top, elbows bent and reaching towards one another. Lengthening through the spine and coming forward, folding from the hip creases to humble warrior. So your left shoulder is coming towards the inside of your left knee. Straightening the arms overhead. Bend the elbows, bring your hands to your hips, grounding through the feet as you come back to warrior one, arms overhead. Amazing job. Planting your hands on the mat, step back to downward dog. Lifting your right leg up towards the ceiling. Bringing your knee to your nose in cheetah, holding here. Extend to three-legged dog. Again, knee to your nose and hold. Three-legged dog. One last time. Bring your knee to your nose. Then plant the right foot, planting the back foot as well. Coming up to warrior one. Interlacing your hands with the right thumb on top this time. Lengthening through the spine and coming forward to humble warrior. So your right shoulder is coming towards the inside of the right knee. And straightening your arms overhead. Bending the elbows, bring your hands to your hips, ground through the feet as you come back up to warrior one, arms overhead. Plant your hands on the mat and step back to downward dog. Lower your knees to the mat, untuck your toes, send the hips back to child's pose, resting your forehead on the mat, arms down by your side. Reaching your arms out in front of you. Lift the hips, tuck the toes, downward dog, and step or float to the top of the mat. Upward salute. Hands through heart center to Tadasana. Upward salute, soft bend in the knees as you fold forward. Halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat, step back to plank, and take a flow of your choice, meeting in downward dog. Lift your left leg to three-legged dog, bend the knee this time and open up the hips, stacking one on top of the other. Drawing circles with the ankle, keeping the weight evenly distributed between the two arms. Switch direction. And square the hips. Lower your left toes and lift the right leg. Again, opening up the hips, drawing circles with the ankle, switching direction. Square the hips, lower your toes back down, lifting the left leg, and planting the left foot, planting the back foot as well so your front heel is aligned with the back arch, windmilling the arms up to warrior two. Keeping your shoulders stacked over your hips, front knee stacked over ankle, and grounding through the outer edge of the back foot, arms out to a T, gaze over the front fingertips. Flipping the front palm, reversing your warrior. Back to warrior two. Bring your hands to your hips, parallel the feet to one another. Lengthening through the spine and folding forward from the hip creases with a flat back to wide-legged forward fold. Planting your hands on the mat, or if you can't reach, reaching for your calves. And playing with shifting the weight further into the hands. And then back into the balls of the feet. Shifting the weight forward into the hands. And back into the balls of the feet. Grounding through the feet as you bring your hands to your hips and slowly come up with a flat back. Setting up for warrior two on the other side, reaching your arms out to the side, gaze over the front fingertips. Flip the front palm, reverse your warrior. Back to warrior two. Windmill the arms down to the mat, step back to downward dog. Lower the knees to the mat, untuck your toes, resting in child's pose. Reaching your arms out in front of you, meeting in downward dog, and this time locking your hands to your feet in forward fold. Reaching up towards the ceiling and turning around to face the top of the mat in Tadasana. Upward salute, forward fold, halfway lift, back to fold. Stepping back to plank, take a flow of your choice and meet in downward dog. Lifting the left leg to three-legged dog. Planting the left foot and walking the left foot out to the edge of the mat, bringing both hands to the inside of your leg as we prepare for lizard pose. Lowering your back knee and untucking your back toe. You can stay here, or if it feels good, you can lower onto your forearms. Coming up on your hands if you're not already, walking the left leg back to the center. Tuck the back toes, lift the knee, send the left leg back to downward dog. Lifting the right leg, planting the right foot, and walking the right foot out to the edge of the mat, bringing both arms to the inside of the leg. Lowering the back knee, untucking the back toes as we settle into lizard. And you're welcome to stay up on your hands or lower down onto your forearms. Walking your right foot back to center. Tuck the back toes, lift the knee, meeting in downward dog. Step or float to the top of the mat. Upward salute. Draw your hands to heart center. And stepping out your feet to about mat width apart with your heels in and your toes pointing outward. Bring your hands to heart center, sitting back into Malasana or yogi squat. And it doesn't matter how deep your squat is, just keeping the chest lifted, still engaging your core to help support your body. Planting your hands on the mat in front of you, straightening the legs and stepping into forward fold. Halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat, step back to plank, take a flow of your choice and meet in downward dog. Lower your knees to the mat, meeting in tabletop. And swivel down onto a seat with your feet planted on the mat and gripping your hands around the thighs. As we move into Navasana or boat pose, bringing your shins parallel to the mat, flexing through the feet. If you need to, you can just do one foot at a time. And extending your arms forward, really engaging the core, reaching through the crown of the head. We'll just hold here for half a minute. You got this. Halfway. Just a couple more seconds. All right, great job. Crossing your legs and making your way into tabletop once again. Tuck the toes, coming back to downward dog. Step or hop to the top of the mat. And reaching your arms up towards the ceiling, meeting in Tadasana. Now shifting the weight into the left leg, bending the right knee, and crossing the right thigh over the left. Bending into both knees. You can stay here, or you can wrap your right leg around even more as we come into eagle pose. Wrapping your right arm underneath the left, elbows coming up, hands coming away from the body, sitting deeper, drawing in towards the midline, and rounding the back as you fold forward to sleeping eagle. Sinking the hips deeper, drawing in towards the midline. Beautiful job. Coming back up to standing, unravel the arms, unravel the legs. Shifting the weight into the right foot, crossing the left thigh over the right, bending as deep as you want, and wrapping the left arm underneath the right. Sinking the hips deep as you round the back, folding forward to sleeping eagle. Grounding through the standing leg. And slowly coming back up to standing. Unravel the arms and unravel the legs. Meeting in Tadasana at the top of the mat. Reaching your arms up towards the ceiling and folding forward. Halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat, step back, taking a flow of your choice. And meeting in downward dog. Walking your hands to meet your feet in forward fold. If you grabbed a book at the beginning of class, go ahead and grab that and place it towards the middle of the mat. And if you don't have one, it's totally not necessary. You can just, we're gonna step our feet onto the book, and if you don't have one, just step onto the mat. Bringing the arches of the feet closer together and bending your knees out wide. As you plant your hands on the mat in front of you, we're setting up for crow pose. Really grounding through the roots of the fingers. As we settle in here, lifting the hips as we draw the elbows in as if we were coming into chaturanga arms. And bringing your knees bringing your knees onto your triceps towards your armpits. Not lifting the feet just yet, just noticing where the knees land. And just playing with rocking the weight forward and back. Really elongating the spine, bringing the gaze slightly forward. Engaging the core and navel coming up towards your rib cage. Just shifting the weight forward and backward. Let's sit back and relax, flipping the palms over so your fingers are coming towards your toes. Just releasing the wrists a little bit. And shake it out. Planting the hands once again, lifting the hips, grounding through the hands, grounding through the fingers, and bringing your knees onto your triceps as you draw your elbows in. And maybe just lifting one foot and then the other, keeping the gaze forward. And maybe you try lifting both feet at the same time. It doesn't matter how many times you come out of the pose, you can always try again. It's totally okay if you never even lift your toes off the mat. Just play with the weight shifting. And if you're using the book or the perch, as I like to call it, maybe throw it off to the side and try with your feet starting on the mat. Amazing job. Let's meet in forward fold. Flipping the palms over so that your fingers are coming towards your toes. Giving your wrists a nice little release. Shaking out your hands and stepping out to downward dog. Lower your knees to the mat, untuck your toes, send the hips back to your heels, resting in child's pose. If your wrists are still feeling a little agitated, you can draw your hands up halfway so that you're giving your wrists a nice little release. Reaching your arms out in front of you, lift the hips, tuck the toes, send the hips back to downward dog. Bring the gaze forward and step or hop to the top of the mat. Reaching up towards the ceiling, drawing your hands to heart center, and just pause for a couple of breath cycles, appreciating what you just did. Reaching up towards the ceiling, folding forward, grasping opposite elbows, ragdolling side to side from the hip creases. Release your arms, halfway lift, back to fold. Plant your hands on the mat, step back to plank, lower your knees to the mat, and lower all the way down. Stacking one hand on top of the other and resting your forehead on your palms. Bringing your hands under your shoulders, pressing gently as you peel the chest off the mat for Cobra. Lower back down, tuck the toes, and send the hips back to downward dog. Lower your knees down to the mat, untuck your toes, meeting in child's pose. Reaching your arms out in front of you, lift the hips, and tuck the toes, lift the hips, and walk or hop forward. Reaching your arms up towards the ceiling, drawing your hands through heart center. Go ahead and drag your mat up to the wall if you have one nearby, or you can drag your mat up to the back of a chair or the front of a chair. We're going to use it for legs up the wall a little bit later. And if you don't have a wall nearby, no worries. It's not necessary. Meet me in Tadasana at the top of the mat. Reach your arms up towards the ceiling, folding forward. Halfway lift, back to fold, step back to downward dog. Lower the knees to tabletop and swivel the hips around to a seated position with your legs stretched out in front of you. Reaching through the crown of the head in this Dandasana staff pose and folding forward in any amount. Coming back up, widen your legs, reaching through the crown of the head and shifting to face your right leg, folding forward in any amount. Come back to center, rotate to face your left leg, folding forward. Come back to center. Bring your legs back to the midline. Reach your arms out in front of you and slowly lower all the way down onto your backs. Bringing the soles of the feet together, knees coming out wide. Supine Bada Konasana, reclined bound angle. You can shift your heels to be closer or farther away from your sits bones. Whatever you find comfort in. Coming back to the breath. Using your hands to guide your legs closed, drawing the knees in towards the chest. Keeping the right knee drawing in as you lay the left leg long on the mat, flexing through the feet, and hugging the knee in deeper towards the chest with each exhale. Reach your right arm out to the side and draw your right knee across the body for a twist, keeping your shoulder blades planted on the mat and your gaze up towards the ceiling. If you'd like, you can bring your gaze over your right shoulder. Bring the gaze back to center. Bring your legs back to center, hugging both knees in towards the chest. Rocking a little side to side, forwards and backwards. And keep the left knee hugging into the chest as you lay your right leg long on the mat. Hugging the left knee in deeper towards the chest with each exhale. Flexing through both feet. Reach your left arm out to the side, drawing your left knee across the body for a twist. Keeping your shoulder blades planted on the mat and your gaze up towards the ceiling. And if you'd like, you can bring your gaze over your left shoulder. Bring the gaze back to center, bring the knees back to center, hugging in both knees in towards the chest. And planting your feet on the mat, windshield wipering your knees from side to side. Meet back at center. Lift your right leg up towards the ceiling. Externally rotate the leg and cross your right ankle over your left thigh. Reaching your hands for your left thigh and hugging the knees in towards the chest. Flexing through both feet, nudging your right thigh away from the body with your right elbow if that feels good. In this supine figure four, kind of like a reverse pigeon, or an upside down pigeon. Lower your left foot back down onto the mat, uncross your legs, windshield wiper the legs from side to side. Meet back at center. Lift your left leg up towards the ceiling, externally rotating the left leg and crossing your left ankle over your right thigh. Clasping your hands around the right thigh, drawing it in towards the chest, flexing both feet. And if it feels good, you can nudge your left thigh away from the body with your left elbow for an added stretch. Releasing your thigh and bringing your right foot back down onto the mat. Uncross your legs. Windshield wiper your knees from side to side. Meet back at center and draw the knees in towards the chest as you grab the outside of the feet, drawing your knees in towards the armpits for happy baby. Maybe rocking a little bit side to side, drawing the tailbone towards the mat. Slowly release, rolling onto your right side and pressing yourself up. Sitting sideways towards the wall or the chair, leaving enough room for you to lie back onto your mat. Reaching your legs up the wall or up the chair. If you don't have one, just go ahead and lay back into Shavasana on the mat. Scrubbing your heels up towards the ceiling. And enjoying this inversion. We'll stay here for a little bit longer before moving into Shavasana. Slowly drawing the knees in towards the chest. Rolling onto your right side. And making your way onto your mat, lying down. With your arms down by your sides. Allowing the feet to splay apart. Allowing the gaze to soften or the eyes to close. Doing a full body scan from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, releasing any remaining tension as you settle into your Shavasana. Start to bring awareness back into the body, wiggling the fingers and the toes, drawing circles with the wrists and the ankles. Reaching your arms up overhead for a full body stretch. And using your arm as a pillow as you roll onto your right side. Using your hands to push yourself back up into a seated position. With your palms together at heart center, feel free to repeat after me. Namaste. All right, thank you all so much for joining me this evening.